It's Wednesday, June 17th, 2026, and it's Swamp Time, where I cover the daily happenings inside our federal machine. And if you enjoyed the video, please give a quick like and subscribe and leave a comment, click the notification bell, and I'll keep you up to date on everything in the swamp from Monday through Friday. Every article is linked below in the description, and the highlight segments from tonight's episode will drop tomorrow morning, starting at 8 a.m. Eastern. We're going to fire things up with the topic of education, the Department of Education. It appears that Democrats, they want to impeach Secretary Linda McMahon. I wonder why. Suzanne Bonamici says Secretary McMahon has betrayed students and families and educators by dismantling and demolishing the Department of Education. Yeah, I mean, that's how you know that you're directly over the target when Democrats are freaking out and threatening to impeach you. Something she does not have the authority to do, even though she is the head of the Department of Education. She's the secretary for the Department of Education, but I'll concede to her point. Congress created the department, and it would take an act of Congress to shut it down. About 90% of students in this country attend public schools. Students have the right to equal access without discrimination. Yeah, dude, like, are you freaking kidding? You're really going to stand up on that soapbox with regard to discrimination with all your DEI bullshit and all the discriminatory practices we've been covering on the swamp just this week alone? It's been insane. And let's see. So students have the right to equal access without discrimination, and students with disabilities have the right to a free and appropriate education. By the way, there is no such thing as free, but I'll concede again. I will not stand by and let Secretary McMahon destroy the federal programs and funding and research that are critical to public schools and the millions of students they serve. I would say that the Trump administration is directly over the target. She's not shutting down the Department of Education. She's just moving some things around to make the Department of Education run a lot more efficiently. Now, if Secretary Linda McMahon had her way, she would absolutely dissolve the Department of Education, because that's what needs to be done to save our students in this country. Because before the Department of Education, we had some of the best education programs on earth. But now, I don't even know if we're even in the top 50. It's absolutely ridiculous. So she leaves an article to her House profile, which is Bonamici. I'm probably pronouncing her name wrong, but whatever. .house.gov. Rep. Bonamici announces plan to impeach Education Secretary McMahon. And I'm not going to go through all the details. It's a bunch of baloney, I'm sure, anyway. But I will be fair, and I will link it below in the description. It'll probably be the first link in the description below if you check it out. But let's see what Secretary Linda McMahon has to say about all this. Posted 4 hours ago as of this recording. It speaks volumes that House Democrats think an impeachable offense is working to improve student outcomes and reduce the federal bureaucracy. They must not be bothered by chronic failures of our education system that result in historic low test scores, a failed FAFSA form rollout, not to mention the rampant fraud surrounding that too, well, student loans in particular, and also classrooms shuttered during COVID, which was an absolute disaster. And my daughter was in school at the time. She's in middle school at the time, and it was an absolute effing disaster. Designating parents as terrorists, which they were absolutely doing during the Biden administration. I'm sure Democrats still would, if they had it their way, currently would be designating parents as domestic terrorists, and males in female locker rooms, because, yeah, that's exactly what our school system needs. Washington spends billions of taxpayer dollars annually, having spent more than $3 trillion since the Department of Education was established in 1980, yet just 1/3 of children can read proficiently. To the Democrats in Congress, do better. I mean, if I was her, I'd say to the Democrats in Congress, bring it on. You know, if you want to impeach her, which it's not going to go anywhere anyway, you know, this is just, you know, grandstanding by the Democrats, just pretending like they're actually doing something that's going to affect any kind of change, which it won't. But if it were to get that far, I'd say, fine, haul her in front of Congress and have her testify, and you could do your exchanges. You can have your 5-minute rounds and have a second round of your 5 minutes of back and forth. And look, when it comes to the education, it's completely night and day. And Secretary Linda McMahon, she laid it out very briefly and very right over target, very strategically, very thoroughly, in so few words as she listed out. But, you know, I don't even have to go into so many details. We all know that the public education system is completely screwed, and it's been run by Democrats and Democratic bureaucrats. What is it, 90% of the D.C. bureaucracy who votes, they vote Democrat in D.C.? So, I mean, that's no shocker to anybody. All right, so I got another one from Secretary Linda McMahon. It's not directly related to that, but I figured since I'm discussing Secretary Linda McMahon, I might as well roll through with this segue. Proud to award Indiana a returning education to the states waiver. The waiver gives state leaders greater control over federal funds by consolidating 5 funding streams into one, streamlining nearly $50 million over the next 4 years to support proven literacy and numeracy programs.
Crucially, this waiver, and I think this is incredibly important, frees $20 million in state and local funds from bureaucratic red tape compliance paperwork and returns it to its rightful place in the classroom.
This waiver allows Indiana to streamline federal requirements, reduce unnecessary red tape, put more resources directly into our classrooms where they make the greatest difference.
And the founders never intended education to be the bailiwick of the federal government. And look how it's evolved over time. From when it got started back in the Carter administration, that to me looked like a money trap, and it was going to take away the flexibility of the 50 states that obviously do things better. You can see why we're setting the pathway, I think, for many places, including education. And today, I'm especially grateful to Secretary McMahon for coming here to help us celebrate this. And to you, Katie Jenner, keep doing it. We're only just beginning. Thank you so much.
Well, of course, Democrats will stand on issues that belong to the states with voting and all the other nonsense, the SNAP benefits or welfare benefits and all that stuff, because it benefits them a lot more, and they don't want anybody to be digging into what they've been involved with. But when it comes to education, oh, no, we can't have just the states decide how we provide education to our students. We got to make it a whole federal issue. And now they've turned it into this big, giant, propaganda, brainwashing bureaucracy, and it's just gone downhill with all these stupid standards, and it's just ridiculous across the board. All right, so let's just move on to Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon with the Department of Justice, and she heads up the Civil Rights Division in the Department of Justice. Today is a new day for parental rights. The Civil Rights Division will restore parental authority. No secret transitions, no hiding from information from parents, no surveys without consent. We will investigate, we will litigate, and defund as necessary. Parents, your voice is back now. Hell yeah.
Today is a new day for parental rights in America. I'm thrilled to announce that the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division and the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights have just signed a historic interagency agreement to protect you, your children, and your families in our nation's schools. Years ago, Congress passed 2 clear, powerful laws. First, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, aka FERPA, and second, the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, PPRA. Those laws are simple and clear. A school cannot hide your child's educational records or curriculum from you, and it cannot force your child to discuss sensitive topics without your consent. But too many schools have ignored these protections, twisted the rules, and kept parents in the dark exactly when their children needed them the most.
Yeah, because gender transition is not sensitive.
This new partnership between the Departments of Justice and Education gives real teeth to what the law already says. Federally funded schools cannot hide information from you or shut you out of decisions about your own child's education. Under Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche's leadership, the Justice Department is delivering on President Trump's promise. We are restoring parental authority, shielding children from ideological indoctrination, and making sure every dollar of federal funding supports common sense education. I have directed the Civil Rights Division to use every single tool we have. No more bureaucratic delays, no more endless paperwork. We're cutting through the red tape, and we're taking decisive action. If a school has a policy or practice that blocks you from exercising your rights, we will investigate. If necessary, we will litigate. And if a school continues to violate the law, then that school will not receive federal funds anymore.
There you go.
Parents, your voice is back. Your rights are being enforced, and your children's future is safer than ever. This is real change you'll be able to see, and it starts right now.
Well, hallelujah. It's about damn time. about damn time they start enforcing the ability for parents to retain their rights when it comes to public education, because we are paying for it at the end of the day. Not the Democrats, not the bureaucracy. We are. It's our money that's funding the public education system. So I think that parents individually have a right to determine what it is that their children or give permission as to what they're learning in school, especially when they get as insane as something like this. Another one from AAG Army Dillon: affirmative action for Eskimos and LGBT people. The California Public Utility Commission's supplier diversity program has gone off the rails. This may be news to California, but race and sex discrimination violate federal law. Civil rights will take any appropriate action. And I'm not going to read like all the details of the letter. It tends to take up a lot of time, but I will repost, and there's a direct link below to my profile in the description. It'll take you directly to this post. You may have to scroll down for like 5 seconds to get to it, but it'll be there. Or you can go to AAG Dillon with an HDHILLON, and you can find it there as well. And from J.D. Vance: doctors and hospitals used junk science from WPATH to justify selling gender transition procedures to kids and their parents. Huge props to Andrew and his team for taking an important step in our efforts to end this outrageous practice. This was posted by Andrew Ferguson 8 hours ago. Since President Trump was sworn in, the FTC has been aggressively protecting children and the rights of parents across every part of the economy. Today, the FTC took another huge step in defense of children and parents. We have filed an enforcement action against the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, or WPATH, for making false and unsubstantiated claims about the safety and efficacy of medical transition procedures, and for providing to doctors the means to sell those procedures to children and parents. The FTC has brought hundreds of cases against people who make false and unsubstantiated health claims for nearly a century. Today's lawsuit is no different. We allege that WPATH made deceptive and unsubstantiated claims about the necessity, the safety, and efficacy of certain drugs and surgeries used to medically transition children. My God. Medical providers conveyed WPATH's deceptive and unsubstantiated claims to assure parents of the benefits of medical transition services for their children. This enabled medical providers to make permanent, irreversible changes. Puberty blockers are not temporary, they're permanent. Can't hit the pause button on puberty. To the bodies of these children, often at enormous physical, personal, and financial cost. And this is going to be on ftc.gov. And maybe I'll just read the first couple of paragraphs of this, and of course, as always, it'll be linked below. The Federal Trade Commission, along with Alaska, Iowa, Nebraska, and Texas, today filed a lawsuit against the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, or WPATH, alleging the organization has provided the means for medical providers to make false and unsubstantiated claims to parents in order to sell pediatric medical transition services. WPATH, an association of clinicians who profit from pediatric medical transition services, recommended medical interventions, including drugs and even surgery on children, removing their genitalia and their breasts for children and adolescents who expressed dissatisfaction with or distress about their sex traits. In their complaint, the FTC and its state partners alleged that these recommendations misled parents and children about the medical consensus and medical necessity, as well as the safety and effectiveness of such services, which is in violation of the FTC Act. Quote, today, the FTC filed a lawsuit against WPATH alleging the organization made false and unsubstantiated claims regarding the necessity, effectiveness, and safety of puberty blockers and hormones and sex change surgeries, said Chairman Andrew N. Ferguson. Children, but especially their parents, must have complete and truthful information when making decisions to purchase medical services. For decades, the FTC has taken action against entities that make deceptive and unsubstantiated health-related claims. The complaint filed today reflects that same long-standing mandate. When an entity makes a claim about a medical treatment, the claim must be truthful, evidence-based, and not misleading. In 2022, WPATH omitted all mention of age limitations for breast amputation or penis removal from the Standards of Care document, providing the organization's official recommendations for treating sex trait-related dissatisfaction or distress in children. As alleged in the complaint, WPATH did not base this decision on medical evidence. No, it was their ideology. That's what it was all about. Quote, when an organization provides guidance designed to mislead families about the risks, benefits, or medical consensus behind a treatment, it undermines trust in those responsible for providing medical care, said Commissioner Mark R. Mader. Our action today is a straightforward application of the law to ensure that families receive accurate, evidence-based information as they seek to make some of the most important healthcare decisions for their children. And of course, that will be linked below. As I said, it's a bit long. I hardly ever have time to get through all of the articles because I always cram pack so much stuff to cover in so little time. But there you go, man. It's all about depopulation. That's just my opinion. I think they just want to depopulate the earth. They want that 100 million human population. They want it reduced, and that is one surefire way to get it done, is to just convince children that they're the opposite sex so they can remove their genitalia. Can't have kids without genitalia. All right, so let me go back, head back to the main list. One more. There we go. From Libs of TikTok. I don't know if you remember this guy, Ian Roberts. He was the former superintendent for, I think it was in Iowa, right? Des Moines Public Schools. He was the former superintendent of Des Moines, Iowa Schools, or DM Public Schools, and he was also an illegal alien. I would have worded this a little differently. He's not a former illegal alien. He is a current illegal alien, but former superintendent of DM schools who was sentenced to 2 years for falsely claiming to be a U.S. citizen and illegally possessing a firearm. He even gave an interview to KCCI News from jail. During the interview, Roberts claims his decision to flee from ICE was not an attempt to evade law enforcement, while suggesting that ICE is racist for targeting someone who looks like me. He then lies, claiming that he legally possessed firearms despite being convicted of illegally possessing multiple firearms. This guy can't get deported fast enough.
I guess the question that a lot of people have been asking, you know, on a lot of our stories is, why did you run?
So
Because he was
there are
guilty.
a couple of thoughts, right? So what people need to understand is, one, and I think for the first time shared publicly, folks got a sense of my background. I'm a commissioned military officer, and so my immediate and instant reaction, if someone puts their hand on a firearm who's not in a uniform,
So his military training tells him to run.
Needed to, as someone who was also armed, wanted to make sure that I made the right decision in a split second.
That's the right decision. Right in front of the cops.
To evade law enforcement. So immediately as I started to think about the possibility of who they are, I've seen the hundreds and hundreds of videos around the country. What happens when someone who looks like me is confronted by law enforcement? Certainly, under the circumstances where I also had access to firearms. So it was prudent for me to make a decision.
Yeah, because every single minority in contact with police ends up getting control alt
Another
deleted.
question
Yeah,
that,
okay.
you know, a lot of people have some concerns about is, why was there a firearm in the DMPS vehicle?
Uh-oh.
There's a firearm in the vehicle that I had because, one, it's a legally owned and purchased and possessed firearm.
Not for an illegal immigrant.
I have been the subject of multiple threats
Oh, poor
over
me.
the last several years, right? There's public record that speaks to that.
Wouldn't happen if you weren't here.
Yeah, there was no... That's the rationale. That's the rationale.
Gotcha.
I'm surprised that, I don't know, I would imagine his lawyer probably explicitly told him not to talk to anybody, because any good lawyer worth his salt would say exactly that. Don't talk to anybody. And now he's all over the internet, like explaining why there was a firearm in his car. Probably not a very good move, but anyway, there you go. Not too bright, even though he was the superintendent of a public school. So, I mean, he's got to have some measure of intelligence about him. All right, so Libs of TikTok, another one. Breaking: federal agents in Villa Park, Illinois were pursuing a wanted individual when the suspect fled into a Vaza Fitness. Never heard of it. The gym staff then denied federal agents access to the gym, preventing them from making the arrest. When is Vaza Fitness protecting wanted, or why are they protecting wanted criminals? Well, because it's all about their political ideology. They just hate immigration and customs enforcement. They hate all forms of law enforcement at this point. It's pretty scary to imagine if Democrats get back the House, the Senate, the Oval Office, everything that they're going to railroad through, especially if they nuke the filibuster. I mean, you might as well say goodbye to federal law enforcement for sure. I would have almost probably make a Vegas bet on that. So anyway, this isn't a video, it's just an image, but this is from the village of Villa Park, Illinois. Government It looks like, what is this, on Facebook, I'm assuming. This morning at approximately 9 o'clock a.m., the Villa Park Police Department responded to the area of Vaza Fitness on North Avenue after receiving information that a federal law enforcement agency was attempting to apprehend a wanted individual. According to information provided on scene, the federal agency attempted to conduct a traffic stop on the individual. During the encounter, the subject exited the vehicle and he fled on foot into Vaza Fitness. Federal agents attempted to enter the business in an effort to locate the individual, but were denied access by Vaza Fitness staff. Villa Park police officers responded to ensure public safety and maintain scene security. After a brief period on scene, the federal agency concluded its operations and departed the area without taking the individual into custody. It still just blows my mind how little enforcement authority that federal agents really have. It's mind-blowing, really. No arrests were made, no injuries were reported, and there was and continues to be no threat to public safety. Dude, you have a wanted criminal, a guy who's wanted by a federal agency. He's wanted by the feds, for crying out loud, and he took off running. Why was he running if he did nothing wrong? Okay, no threat to public safety. Okay, all right. The Villa Park Police Department subsequently cleared the scene. In the interest of transparency and our commitment to keeping the community informed, we wanted to provide this update regarding the law enforcement activity that occurred in the area this morning. No further information is available. I don't know why the federal agents didn't just sit out there and wait. I mean, it might have taken hours. They might have been stuck there waiting like 10, 12 hours until the fitness place closed, but they would have gotten them sooner or later. I mean, it wasn't like they were going to let them stay in there all night long. I guess maybe if it's a 24-hour place, but that would have made, headline news for sure. If the federal agents are staked outside a 24-hour fitness center and dude's in there, like, how long would that drag out? Because the leftists would show up with food and probably blankets and whatnot. They'd probably allow them to live in there. It'd probably be a multi-month standoff. You were friggin' ridiculous. All right, so let's move on. FBI Director Kash Patel. FBI arrested an illegal alien flying a drone in restricted airspace near the FIFA World Cup Fan Fest. Well done, FBI Atlanta. Our teams all over the country continue working 24/7 with interagency partners protecting the games. This FBI will pursue and bring to justice any criminal actor who targets the events. From WSB-TV2, Atlanta, illegal immigrant arrested for flying a drone over Atlanta FIFA Fan Fest. And just like the last article or two, I'll just link it. I won't go digging into the details because I think we got the gist of it. And there's probably no footage. No, there's an image, and it's a brief article anyway. I think that probably FBI Director Kash Patel already went over all the basics. And let's head on to FBI Miami, and this is as of today. FBI Miami and our partners are actively enforcing FAA no-fly zones around World Cup venues. To date, we have already ticketed 25 operators and seized 28 drones. So it sounds like they still seized 3 people's drones, even though they didn't ticket them, unless maybe they were arrested, but I think they probably would have said that, and they would have arrested 3 individuals. And again, another article, they go over the details with this. I already talked about this on, Monday? Certainly talked about it last week when they were talking about flying drones. I think it's something like a mile vicinity, or maybe it's a half a mile vicinity from any World Cup stadium event. And you can't do it. If you do it, they will seize your drone and you'll get ticketed and maybe even arrested, depending on, what you're doing. All right, Homeland Security, our heroic ICE officers truly are the best of the best. Thank you to Officer Simmons for jumping into action to save this 6-year-old child from drowning. This was posted by Fox 4 hours ago. A 6-year-old boy was found floating unconscious in a Florida pool. Seconds later, an ICE officer jumped in to save him. ICE law enforcement officer Gregory Simmons spotted the child in distress in Pasco County. Hey, that's the county that borders me to the north. On May 16th, and immediately pulled him from the water. The child wasn't breathing, and Simmons began life-saving CPR at the scene until the boy regained consciousness. Local authorities say the child is expected to make a full recovery. A rescue DHS is calling an act of bravery. Isn't that amazing? Oh, yeah, so it looks like somebody else had him. Looks like maybe another kid found him. Man, that's scary as hell, man. It's good to hear that he's going to make a full recovery. He's going to be all right. Thank God there was an ICE agent there, because I'm sure many of them, if not most of them, are probably trained in CPR and whatnot. So that was a very good thing. And that's not the first the first act of heroism that an ICE officer has made during his time off. I've shown probably at least 2 or 3 other ones here on the Swamp in recent weeks. DOJ Civil Rights Division, U.S. Justice Department moves to intervene in race discrimination lawsuit challenging reparations program in Evanston, Illinois. Quote, under the pretext of paying reparations for events more than 100 years ago, the city of Evanston has chosen to distribute millions of dollars in cash and housing benefits to people because of the color of their skin or the color of the skin of their parents or grandparents or great-grandparents, said Harmeet Dillon, who heads up the Civil Rights Division. Again, there are sound ways for a city to remedy past discrimination or direct resources to its most vulnerable citizens and neighborhoods. Simply handing out money based on race, however, is not the answer. It is race discrimination, pure and simple, and it is illegal. I mean, Illinois wasn't even a southern state, right? I don't even think it was even a Confederate state. I mean, I don't know. I don't know all the details about Illinois and the history of Illinois, but something tells me that slavery probably was not like a long time thing in Illinois. And, you know, anyway, I don't want to get into all the details with the whole, like, you know, only 2% of the population were slave owners, and like roughly half the population of Black America aren't, either they weren't, like their ancestors weren't here during slavery times. Like a lot of people who are here are still immigrants, first, second generation, third generation immigrants from the Caribbean, from Africa, probably Central America, even in areas of South America. So, all right, whatever. So anyway, the U.S. Justice Department moves to intervene in a race discrimination lawsuit challenging reparations program in Evanston, Illinois. There are sound ways for a city to remedy past discrimination or direct resources to its most vulnerable citizens and neighborhoods. And, you know, handing out money, it's illegal if you're basing it specifically off of reparations. And this is the article in its entirety on justice.gov. And let me see if I can get a couple of numbers at least, because she said they mentioned millions of dollars. So let's see. All right, well, here we go. So in 2019, the city adopted the local reparations restorative housing program. Under this program, Black persons who lived in the city of Evanston as an adult at any time between the years 1919 and 1969, as well as their children, grandchildren, or great-grandchildren, can receive $25,000 in the form of cash payments, which the recipient can use for any purpose or financial assistance for purchasing, repairing, or maintaining a primary residence in the city. The city has not identified any specific acts of discrimination that violated the Constitution or statute that these payments are intended to remedy, nor does the city require any evidence that recipients or their ancestors experienced discrimination when they lived in the city. Race alone determines whether a current or former resident or their descendant receives $25,000 in cash or financial assistance for housing. To date, the city has paid over $5 million, and it plans to distribute millions more as funds become available. I wonder if they might be in any kind of debt. Certainly doesn't sound like that they'd be in any kind of debt, the city at least. Or what did they raise local sales tax? I just wonder how they're paying for this program. In 2024, descendants of persons who had lived in Evanston between 1919 and 1969, but who were not Black, filed the lawsuit. Flynn et al. Versus City of Evanston, number 24, CV 4269, Indy, Illinois, challenging their exclusion from the city's program as a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Yeah, damn straight. That's exactly what it is. The court denied the city's motion to dismiss the lawsuit in March of 2026. That same month, the United States opened an investigation of the program under the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment and the Fair Housing Act. The city refused to cooperate in the United States investigation. The United States now seeks to intervene in the lawsuit. The United States alleges the program violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, also alleges that by offering and providing financial assistance for housing because of race, the city has violated the Fair Housing Act as well. So when, not if, but when the city is found, guilty or liable or however it is that they determine, guilt or responsibility, how are they going to get this money back for the taxpayers? Are they going to order the people who received $25,000 to return it? Because a lot of people, myself included, would probably have spent all that money by now, and I'm not going to come up with $25,000 easily. I mean, that would take years. I don't know, man. I don't even know how they're going to fix all that, but it sounds like a lot of people, $5 million worth. If you just do the simple math, 5 million divided by 25,000, quite a few people already got the money. So that will be quite a mess to unravel. And let's see, define L's. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. So yeah, apparently the reflecting pool is turning green because it's summertime. So there's an algae bloom in the reflecting pool. You know, I don't see that as being a big deal. There's always algae in the reflecting pool every summer. Just like I played a video a couple of weeks ago when they still had the water drained. I don't even know which news agency it was. It might have actually been the Department of the Interior who posted that video. It was during the Obama administration when the $30-something million was paid to just do some menial repairs and cleaning of the reflecting pool. And like within a week or two, same exact thing. The whole thing turned green, massive algae bloom. It looked like sludge was all over the place. And that's just kind of what happens in the summertime. Pretty much every retention pond around where I live, they all turn green during the summertime too. I'm sure they turn green where you live as well. So anyway, CNN takes a sample of the water in the reflecting pool to test it. They did more investigation on this than the $1 billion worth of fraud happening across the country, which I'm sure they are. They probably ran this all day long. It's absolutely hilarious.
And we're going to scoop up a water sample to see if we can get this tested.
Yeah, why not? Because you don't have anything better to do.
CNN independently took the sample of water and consulted with a pool store that regularly tests water to help read the results. It showed phosphate levels far higher than what is recommended to keep algae at bay based on estimates for a pool that holds 6.5 million gallons of water.
If there's already some phosphate fertilizer
in with the
in
phosphate,
water, that's really opportunistic.
I can imagine they're probably doing that as I speak.
Blue-green algae that can fix nitrogen, so they are having a field day out here, probably.
The Department of Interior says they believe some of the initial problem was residual algae that had accumulated in pipes and insists the filtration system called the ozone nanobubbler is working.
Or it could have just been the air. It rained there. I'm sure it's rained there a few times since the reflecting pool had been filled up. I mean, there's probably a number of different ways the algae could have gotten in. It's called nature. Nature always finds a way. So anyway, sounds like they're going to be adding phosphate in the next day or so. I would imagine they're going to be doing that. All right, so moving on to Rep. Anna Paulina Luna, who happens to be my rep in Congress. John Ballard is a licensed foster parent from Florida District 13, which happens to be my district, who has now been arrested and charged with 20 counts of CSAM and 5 counts of bestiality. This type of degeneracy has no place in Florida District 13 and is among the worst of the worst I've ever heard of. I'm calling on AG James Uthmeyer, who is Florida's Attorney General, to issue the death penalty immediately. And I hope they do pursue the death penalty because they are eligible for the death penalty. Child sex predators are in the state of Florida, thanks to our wonderful Congress and Governor DeSantis signing that into law recently. The death penalty for all child sex predators. Yep, put them all to death. Every last one of them who R-word forcefully penetrating a child. Sorry, YouTube, you don't let me use the R-word, so I gotta use another way. All right, so Seminole foster and adoptive parent accused of possessing child abuse material, bestiality videos after a cyber tip investigation. This is crazy, and I know exactly where Seminole's at. So anyway, a 51-year-old Seminole unincorporated man who was active in the foster and adoptive parent community was arrested after detectives, here, hold on, let me size it up a bit. There we go. After detectives say they found child abuse material and videos involving sexual activity with animals on his phone. John Ballard of Farmington Trail was arrested on Wednesday morning and charged with 20 counts of possession, control, or intentional viewing of child abuse material and 5 counts of possession of sexual activity involving animals. Pinellas County Sheriff Bob Gutierrez said the investigation began after the agency received a cyber tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children on May 12th of 2026. The tip involved communications on Kik, an app that sheriff said has been used in other investigations by offenders to exchange child sexual abuse material and discuss abuse. According to investigators, Ballard communicated with 3 separate people in late April and early May and described acts involving his son and other young children. Gutierrez said the statements were explicit and included descriptions involving very young children. Some of his statements involved sodomy and baby boys under 1 year of age. He had to burn this dude at the stake. Detectives determined Ballard accessed his Kik account from his cell phone at his home and from Always Gossip Salon, which is a hair salon he owns at 10525 Park Boulevard in Seminole. The sheriff said Ballard and his husband, Bradley Borsick, were licensed foster parents through the state and fostered about 23 boys in their home between 2017 and 2023. They also adopted 5 boys between 2015 and 2023. 4 adopted boys currently live in the home, while 1 adopted son, now an adult, lives out of state. Dude, terrifying. The boys range in age from 4 to 12 while living with Ballard and Borsick, according to investigators. This is insane. Let's see how long this is.
Okay.
Oh my
Good
God,
afternoon.
20 minutes.
I'm Pinellas County Sheriff Bob.
Okay, I'll play maybe a minute or so of it, and because it's here on YouTube, I'll provide a link below too, as well as this article.
And we're here this afternoon to announce the arrest of John Ballard, who's a white male. His date of birth is 10/7/1974. He lives at 13045 Farmington Trail in Seminole. And this is really a very difficult case because it involves the betrayal of the trust that the child welfare system puts into people who volunteer to help the most vulnerable among us. And those are children who have been abused, abandoned, and neglected. I want to be extremely clear as we begin here today that there are great people doing tremendous work in the child welfare system, whether it's foster parents, guardians ad litem, volunteer caseworkers for agencies, child protection investigators, courts, and so many more. These people are doing all they can to protect, care for, and raise other people's children because those people can't or don't care for their children themselves and raise those kids as they should be doing. These kids in the child welfare system range from infants to teenagers. There are way too many parentless kids who, without the tremendous people who make up the child welfare system, would be in very dire situations. But when people agree to be caregivers, they can't betray the trust placed in them and use their role as a playground to fulfill their perverse sexual pleasures. And that's what happened here. John Ballard used his position of trust as a foster parent and an adoptive parent to young boys as part of his personal sexual gratification. Ballard and his husband, Bradley Borsick, were foster parents to about 23 different young boys and adoptive parents to 5 young men.
Now they're going to have to interview every last one of them now.
Ballard today on child pornography and animal bestiality charges. On May 12th, 2026, we received a cyber tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children that a person was communicating on an app called Kik and disclosing through communications with others that he was sexually abusing his 7-year-old son. The person doing that communication was identified as John Ballard, who's on the board next to us, and that's who we arrested today. Kik has been identified in numerous investigations as a platform where child sex offenders exchange child pornography and share their sexual escapades. Ballard communicated via Kik with 3 separate people on 3 separate occasions in late April and early May of this year. And in each of these conversations, Ballard described to the other people the sex acts that he was engaged in with his son and other young children. Ballard's statements about his son and other children are explicit and they're very graphic. Ballard made one statement about his son that, and I quote, "I love feeling him in my mouth," close quote.
Oh my God,
that was one of the more tame statements. Some of the statements by Ballard about what he had done and wanted to do to children in his care are so graphic that I would never publicly disclose them. And in the simplest terms, they're gross.
Unfortunately, the jury's going to have to be put through that, though.
Some of the statements involve sodomy of baby boys under 1 year old. I've included some of the, I'll call it, less gross statements on the board to my right here. And you can see by some of these statements, if you come up after, if you can't read them, you can see and have the context of what he was saying. We learned that Ballard accessed his Kik account from his cell phone at his residence and a hair salon that he owns, which is called Always Gossip Salon, located at 10525 Park Boulevard.
Okay, all right. I'll just leave it there. Again, I'll have this video linked if you want to follow any more of that. This egregious piece of shit of a human being, and it's absolutely disgusting that he happens to live in my area. That's absolutely insane. And, of course, Rep. Anna Paulina Luna is also appalled by that as well, calling for the death penalty, and I couldn't agree more. Maybe he very well could end up being the first individual in the state of Florida to be charged with the death penalty for these egregious acts, for being a child predator, which is putting that extremely lightly. All right, so let's move on to Drew Hernandez. A little bit more on a lighter note. I've obtained footage of Mark Levin crashing out. So, I mean, if you're not crazy about Mark Levin, you probably get some enjoyment out of this. Now, full disclosure, it is AI. It says it's made with Grok Imagine, so I'm not trying to disseminate any kind of propaganda or any misinformation. Mark Levin. So let's have a look.
What? No, this can't be happening. They betrayed me. I'll kill them. My heart, it hurts so much. I can't breathe. Help me.
All right, whatever. So anyway, well, let's move on. Let's pretend that never happened. All right, so U.S. Senator Advisor for Arab and African Affairs. Also good news, and I'm sure there's going to be tons of crickets over on the Democrat side because they're always accusing the Trump administration of being so unhumanitarian and so evil and the poor starving children and so on and so on. The United States announced over $1 billion, $1,000 million in new humanitarian assistance this week, with $800 million going to the World Food Program and $218 million going to UNICEF. This will provide life-saving support to move more than 40 countries, including Sudan and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, among others. The United States is the world's largest and most generous donor to humanitarian causes. These contributions reflect our new humanitarian assistance model built on speed, accountability, measurable impact, and the elimination of bureaucratic waste. With this announcement, the United States continues to take decisive action following our humanitarian reset, including 2 major contributions to UN OCHA, totaling $3.8 billion since December of 2025. So just over the last 6 or so months, $3.8 billion in aid. That is a ton of money. That is insane. Yeah, because Democrats will have you believe that because they ended up shutting down USAID by DOGE, and now we're not sending out any humanitarian assistance anymore. Well, that's not true at all. It's not true. Instead, we just got rid of all the bloat, the waste, the abuse, probably a lot of the fraud, and God knows where all that money was going. Tens, if not probably hundreds of billions of dollars, especially over a long period of time. And moving on to Scott Turner, who is the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. My uncle, an Army veteran, was found homeless. He was found beaten, sick, and battling addiction. Housing alone wasn't enough. With wraparound services and continued care, he lived and died with dignity, surrounded by family. We can't just house people. The key is we have to continue to care.
You know, my uncle was a veteran, Army. And about, I would say 8 years ago, he was found in South Dallas in an abandoned home, barely clothed, beaten up, substance abuse with a debilitating, life-taking disease. And we found him. And we put him in a home with just a few other veterans with wraparound services to get him cleaned up, to put the axe to the root of why he was there, to get him fed, clothed, given the proper medication. And then our family, members of our family took him and put him in one of the homes that our family has with my aunt and my uncle to take care of him.
Yeah, you know, countless stories like that happening every day. And Secretary Scott Turner had mentioned over the last couple of weeks, I mean, he's really been laser focused on the fact that housing alone, just throwing money at housing for homeless, isn't going to solve the problem. And that the best case that you could look at is California, with $24 billion that they dumped into housing for the homeless, and there's more homeless than ever living on the streets of California. So more services are needed aside from just housing. If you just put them in a house, it's not going to fix the problem. It's putting a Band-Aid on an open wound, and that's what he's staying on top of currently. Secretary Doug Burgum with the Department of the Interior. Thanks to the president's leadership, companies are shifting investment back toward dependable, secure energy infrastructure that can power our economy and lower utility costs. This is directly on the Department of the Interior's website, DOI.gov. Interior announces new energy agreement to strengthen American energy security and lower costs. And let's see, starting with Washington today, the Department of the Interior announced a settlement agreement with affiliates of Invenergy, it's Invenergy, I think, North America's largest privately held developer, owner, and operator of independent power infrastructure aimed at strengthening America's security and lowering costs, advancing goals central to President Donald Trump's energy dominance agenda. As part of the settlement agreement, Invenergy will voluntarily terminate its affiliates' 4 offshore wind leases located in the New York Bight, Central Coast of California, and the Gulf of Maine, totaling $765 million. I'm sure most, if not probably all of that was government funded, and redirect that amount toward other domestic energy sources with the demonstrated capability to deliver reliable, affordable power, including the development of natural gas-fired power plants in Indiana and Wisconsin, Iowa, Kansas, and Missouri, and geothermal power generation projects in the western U.S. These landmark settlement agreements provide partial reimbursement for offshore wind leases that require significant taxpayer support. Well, there you go. By ending these leases and encouraging investment in reliable, cost-effective conventional energy sources, the settlement agreements promote mutually beneficial projects designed to deliver strong returns for American taxpayers. And if you want to read the quotes in the rest of this article, you know where to find the link. And let's rock and roll. Head back and move on. Secretary Doug Burgum, got another one from Secretary Doug Burgum. Under the president's leadership, the Department of the Interior is working on projects citywide to support a new golden age for Washington, D.C., cleaning up all the monuments and the statues and trying to get D.C. looking beautiful for the 4th of July, our 250th birthday as a nation. And then we've got the entire year to enjoy 250 years of America as a country. I'm not familiar with like where this is or what this is, but it's definitely breathtaking. Looks amazing. You know, he's doing a real good job for sure. And yeah, they did say that this, I believe he actually shared an image of this on Monday or it might have been yesterday. I believe they said that this project that they're working on is going to be done on July the 2nd or maybe July the 3rd. But regardless, it'll be finished in time for the 4th. From the U.S. Department of Labor, under the President and Vice President, the White House Fraud Task Force is ending unemployment fraud. Acting Secretary Sonderling put every governor on notice. The U.S. Department of Labor and also the U.S. Labor IG will use every available enforcement tool to stop fraudulent payments. The days of unchecked fraud are over.
Vice President's task force is eliminating all of this fraud. And just this morning, I sent a letter to 53 governors of states and territories saying the Department of Labor is going to take unprecedented action to stop this fraud. I have warned, along with my Inspector General at the Department of Labor, Anthony D'Esposito, that we will use every resource we have to stop states from making fraudulent unemployment insurance payments, including for the first time in history, cutting off administrative funds to those states who aren't complying. So we're requiring states now to make sure that we stop paying first and verify later. We are going to verify first, verify that these are people, verify that the money's not going to gangs and criminal organizations, verifying that the money's not going overseas, verifying that the person is who they say they are and they're actually eligible for unemployment.
Amen.
Look, unemployment is supposed to just be a temporary bridge for people who lost their jobs to get back in the workforce, not a scam to rip off taxpayer dollars. And unfortunately, that's what happened during the Biden administration. And specifically, I called out a few states that continue to have the most fraud. New York is paying over $2 million a day in improper payments related to unemployment insurance. California owes over $20 billion to a trust fund. And between New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and Illinois, they've paid last year over $2.5 billion of improper payments. And due to the Vice President's leadership and the task force, this is stopping, and I'm going to use every available tool the Department of Labor has to hold these governors accountable to stop the theft of your taxpayer dollar.
Dude, California is so cooked. What did he say? $20 billion in it that they owe, that they have to repay because they probably wasted it on improper payments or God knows what. Who knows? They are absolutely screwed. All right, U.S. Department of Labor today. The U.S. Department of Labor is officially putting governors on notice. Unemployment benefits are for Americans who need temporary assistance, not fraudsters. States that fail to protect taxpayer dollars and combat unemployment fraud could lose federal funding for the first time ever. The days of turning a blind eye to fraud are over. And you can read more at, what is this, Wall Street Journal? And, oh yeah, so they did mention unemployment benefits are for Americans and not fraudsters. Dude, there's a lot of fraudsters who are also Americans. I would say potentially probably the majority of fraudsters, people who are committing fraud in the country, are probably American citizens. You know, not to say that Americans don't commit fraud, because they very much do. And yeah, I was gonna say, I figured I was gonna get hit with the paywall, because that's what they do here on the Wall Street Journal. They hit you with the paywall. Oh wait, maybe not. Hey, look at that. Hey, they gave me a free article today, it looks like. So I might as well take advantage of it while I got it in front of me. The Trump administration is warning all 50 states that they risk losing federal funding for unemployment insurance benefits if they don't comply with anti-fraud efforts. The administration alleges that unemployment benefits have become an easy target for fraud, especially in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, when millions of Americans relied on aid after losing their jobs. And it might be the next post, but there was, I believe it was a study or survey with regard to Republicans and Democrats, and the number of Democrats who are all for eliminating the fraud, it's on the increase, and we'll get to that in a minute. In a letter to state governors viewed by the Wall Street Journal, Acting Labor Secretary Keith Sonderling wrote that the benefits are meant to be temporary support for workers searching for employment. He said the department would use every available tool to protect taxpayer money, including withholding administrative funds from states for the first time in history. Look, I'm not all for them just withholding funds. You know, it's not a good thing. It doesn't help people who actually need these benefits. However, these states got to get their shit together, because God knows how much money. Like, he gave the example of California, it's something like $20 billion. That's not chump change, man. That's a shitload of money. There's no single national program that provides unemployment benefits. Since the Great Depression, the federal government has instead partnered with individual states to provide temporary financial assistance to workers who have lost their jobs through no fault of their own and to meet certain other requirements. More than 40 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits at the height of the pandemic. Oh my God, dude, 40 million Americans filed for unemployment, and they were getting paid out at a rate of $15 an hour, which I guess for the majority of Americans, that's, you know, they make quite a bit more, if not a significant amount more than that. But historically, unemployment benefits, I would say for the majority of Americans, $15 an hour, that'd be a godsend. But all right, so filed for unemployment benefits at the height of the pandemic, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. As of this year, according to Labor Department, approximately 1.8 million Americans currently receive benefits. Most states typically provide 26 weeks, or about 6 months of unemployment benefits to workers who qualify. While the payments are primarily funded through state unemployment taxes paid by employers, the federal government covers administrative costs and, on occasion, gives loans to individual state programs. And wasn't it up to a year? I think it was something like a year back in the COVID days that people could be on unemployment. It might have been even longer than that. Labor Department spokesman said the likely impact of states losing federal administrative funding would be their system shutting down, as administrative funding is what covers the cost to operate the program. In other words, people who actually need these benefits may end up not receiving their benefits for a period of time. The Trump administration is alleging that lax oversight at the state level has allowed individuals to improperly collect unemployment benefits, straining a system meant to support those with a legitimate need for temporary assistance. And you know what? If there are people who do need the benefits and they don't get them, and if they reach out to their members of Congress, their local government, their state government, all they're going to hear is, oh, it's all Trump's fault. It's all the Trump administration's fault. They're the ones that cut off the money. It's not our problem. The administration said that states have failed to police their programs and cited California as a particularly glaring example. Here we go. The state is more than $20 billion in debt to the federal government, according to the California Employment Development Department. So I'm assuming that's just employment or unemployment alone, which it attributes to the pandemic and says it is paying back. I somehow doubt that. The Trump administration blames that debt on years of fraud, improper payments, and mismanagement. The Office of Governor Gavin Newsom dismissed those allegations, saying California has taken aggressive steps to combat fraud in unemployment payments with new identity verification processes and tracking systems post-pandemic. Well, look, I don't think that I would argue that they know who they're giving these unemployment benefits to. The question is, do they deserve it, or are they eligible for it? Are they even allowed to be inside this country? It seems the Trump administration has forgotten the glaring fact that it was Trump who oversaw the lax regulations and rushed distribution to unemployment benefits during the COVID-19 pandemic, which created the conditions allowing for unemployment insurance fraud to proliferate, Newsom spokeswoman Marissa Saldivar said. And look, to be fair, Trump was president throughout 2020. And unemployment during the COVID era, it was rolled out by the Trump administration, so I'm not going to push back against them on that, at least. The Labor Department said it would press the states to update existing technology, strengthen identity verification procedures, and implement stricter controls to ensure that benefits flow to citizens with legitimate unemployment claims. The days of excuses are over. States that fail to protect taxpayer dollars should expect consequences, said Labor Inspector General Anthony D'Esposito, adding that the department would lose all means available to demand accountability, recover stolen money, and ensure unemployment benefits only go to eligible Americans. So I'll just cut it there. Well, actually, I'm pretty much at the end anyway. I might as well finish it. The effort is part of the White House Anti-Fraud Task Force helmed by Vice President J.D. Vance, who delivered a similar warning to state Medicaid programs last month. The administration cut off funding to Hawaii's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit, the state-level watchdog charged with policing wrongdoing. The state responded by establishing an anti-fraud strike force to root out abuse in an effort to return to compliance with federal statutes. Conservatives have long complained that regulations governing unemployment benefits are too lax, and during the 2024 campaign, the Heritage Foundation called on Congress to pass legislation to overhaul the system, including with measures such as stronger identity verification standards. The current move by the Trump administration comes as the unemployment rate stands at 4.3%. I mean, it's certainly been a lot worse than that. I think historically 4.3% is actually not that bad, I don't think. I'm pretty sure that's not too bad. All right. Let's roll on. Inspector General Anthony D'Esposito, a Pennsylvania fraudster, is headed to prison for 6+ years for a scheme investigated by the Department of Labor, Office of the Inspector General, also the Pennsylvania Labor Industry, and the FBI in Philadelphia. Vice President Vance's White House Fraud Task Force and the DOJ's Fraud Division are sending a clear message: steal from taxpayers and American workers, and you'll pay. And I got another one, or they provided another one on justice.gov. Lehigh Valley man sentenced to over 6 years in prison for pandemic unemployment assistance fraud and defrauding local car dealerships. Out of Philadelphia, the United States Attorney David Metcalf announced that Justin Heimbach, age 34, of Bath, Pennsylvania, was sentenced today to 76 months in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and asked to pay back $598,257 in restitution by United States District Judge John M. Young for schemes to defraud the federal government and multiple local car dealerships. The defendant was charged by indictment in August of 2024 and pleaded guilty in February of this year to 6 counts of mail fraud and 4 counts of wire fraud. And back in March of 2020, Congress passed the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act, which created the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. The PUA program provided unemployment benefits to individuals not eligible for regular unemployment compensation or extended unemployment benefits. And I assume where they're going to go, they're going to say he took full advantage of all that and then some, committed all kinds of fraud under that. On April 7th, the Department of Justice announced the creation of the National Fraud Enforcement Division, which if you've been watching this channel, then you're very well aware of that by now, because I make references to them all the time. Let's see. So, all right, it looks like we got the gist of it. I mean, I suppose I could read this part. Heimbach defrauded multiple Lehigh Valley car dealerships by purchasing vehicles in the names of other construction companies registered to or associated with him and writing checks for those vehicles on bank accounts that had an insufficient balance to cover the transaction. So there you go. Writing checks to car dealerships, getting vehicles that he could not afford, committing all kinds of fraud. And from the U.S. DOT, Department of Transportation, the Office of the Inspector General, our investigation conducted with the FBI leads to a conviction of a man for defrauding private jet customers out of $15 million. This is going to be on oig.dot.gov, and it's a very brief one, so won't take all that long to get through. On June 3rd, 2026, a federal jury in the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland convicted Patrick Britton Haar of 6 counts of wire fraud. Britton Haar owned a company which offered private charter flights. He defrauded his victims of approximately $15 million by falsely promising to use their upfront $150,000 payments to help the company buy a plane in exchange for a block of discounted flight hours and a promise that their money would be protected. The DOT OIG conducted this investigation with the FBI. So they're nailing it. It sounds like they're just going after everybody. and everybody they shall go after, especially with the White House Fraud Task Force in place. Also, the Department of Justice's newly created Fraud Division. So they're setting up shop, and they're taking everybody down. At least let's hope so. From Alpha News, a poll, Minnesotans don't like Tim Walz or the new state flag. What a shocker. A plurality of voters said they trust Republicans more than Democrats to reduce fraud. So that was what I was talking about. And I know that they've got, yeah, here it is. I knew that they had an article regarding this on alphanews.org. Minnesotans don't like Tim Walz or the new state flag. And does that mean they're going to change the state flag? I think they need to. It looks exactly like the Somalia flag. It's like the spitting image of the Somalia flag. Tim Walz is more unpopular than he has ever been, but still not as unpopular as the new state flag, according to a poll released this week. A new KARE11 Star Tribune U of M poll found that just 39% of Minnesotans approve of Governor Walz's performance, while 53% disapprove, and about 8% are undecided. The figure reportedly represents Walz's lowest approval rating since being elected governor, but Minnesota's new state flag fares even worse. The polls showed that just 30% of Minnesotans approve of the redesigned flag, compared to 50% of those who disapprove and 20% who are undecided. The poll also found that most Minnesotans disapprove of President Donald Trump. A total of 41% of respondents said they approve of his performance, whereas 56% disapprove and 3% are undecided. I'm actually surprised that's not a much higher number, being that this is Minnesota. Meanwhile, U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar leads all three of her potential Republican opponents in the race to replace Walz, 48 to 40% against Lisa DeMuth, 48 to 37% against Kendall Qualls, and 53 to 36% against Mike Lindell. However, the poll reveals that 81% of Minnesotans are either very or somewhat concerned about fraud, and a plurality, 45% of voters trust Republicans over Democrats to reduce fraud. Well, fancy that. Because if they had any common sense whatsoever, that's exactly the case. That Democrats, look, all this fraud's happening under not the Republicans' watch, it's happening under the Democrats' watch, under the state government. Minnesota GOP Chair Alex Plechash said the poll confirms that the DFL brand is collapsing. This year's DFL ticket is Walz Flanagan 2.0, the same failed politicians, the same broken priorities, the same excuses, and the same disastrous results, he said. Klobuchar stood with the same political machine that spent an $18 billion surplus, raised taxes by the billions, and looked the other way while fraud exploded. Yeah, and I don't think that Minnesota has any surplus anymore, right? I'm pretty sure I read that at some point also, at some point in the past, that, yeah, they blew through this massive surplus that they had. I imagine that they probably blew it all on solar panels and wind turbines and God knows what else. Fraud. That's probably where most of it went to, fraud. All right. Let's see. Human events breaking. Oh, yeah. Another big story that happened today. President Trump signs the Iran peace agreement. I thought about leading with that, but I assume everybody else is probably going to lead with that today. So I figured I'd start with Secretary Linda McMahon at Palace of Versailles. Report at humanevents.com. So it sounds like it's a done deal. President Trump got it signed, but they kept saying that it was going to be on Friday. So looks like they got it signed a little bit early. So Trump signs Iran peace agreement at the Palace of Versailles. Report, Trump signed a copy of the agreement while attending dinner with French President Emmanuel Macron at the Palace of Versailles. U.S. and Iran leaders have reportedly signed a memorandum of understanding that will bring an end to the war in Iran, or I would say conflict in Iran. Per Axios, Barak Ravid, Trump signed a copy of the agreement while attending dinner with French President Emmanuel Macron at the Palace of Versailles. Two U.S. officials told Ravid on Wednesday evening that the document had been signed remotely by the U.S. and Iran, and that the document is now in effect. A photo of the signed document from Trump was reportedly sent to the Iranians and the mediating countries. And so that's the post by Barak Ravid. President Trump personally signed a copy of the agreement during a dinner with the president of France at the Palace of Versailles. A photo of the signed agreement was sent to the Iranians and the mediating countries. And it looks like not sure if that's actually related or not. The official text of the MOU was released by the U.S. on Wednesday. The 14-point agreement outlined steps toward reopening the Strait of Hormuz, easing certain financial restrictions on Iran, and establishing a framework for future technical negotiations on Iran's nuclear program. The document outlines an end to fighting on all fronts, with a final deal confirming the permanent termination of the war on all fronts. The agreement states, the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran commit to negotiating and achieving the final deal in a maximum of 60 days. So it almost sounds like it's just going to drag on even more, but at least something got signed. At least there's a document that's going to hold both sides to it. And it goes on to say the document also declares that Iran will allow ships to safely pass through the Strait of Hormuz with no charge for 60 days. Additionally, the U.S. agrees under the MOU to develop with regional partners a definitive mutually agreed plan with at least $300 billion for the reconstruction and economic development of the Islamic Republic of Iran. What? Iran will reaffirm that it shall not procure or develop nuclear weapons. So, okay. I guess like with what did it say with plant? Let's see. Hold on. Where did I read that? Okay, with regional partners. U.S. agreed under the MOU to develop with regional partners a definitive mutually agreed plan with at least $300 billion. Okay, I read that right. All right, well, I guess in the agreement, some way or another, that Iran's going to get $300 billion. I would certainly hope that the final agreement will outline exactly who's going to be controlling that money. I'd be a little unnerved to hear that it would be the IRGC or the Ayatollah controlling that $300 billion, because we already know what the hell they're going to do with it. They're going to develop the most big, beautiful nuclear program mankind's ever seen. So anyway, that happened. So I guess we'll just wait 60 days. We'll see if the peace continues for 60 days, and hopefully the gas prices will keep tumbling down in the meantime before they get that final agreement signed. And I think this might be the first post from Rapid Response. I'm the boss! With the LMAO emoji. The president arrives for a working session at the G7 summit in France. Let's have a look at President Trump today.
Hello, I'm the boss.
Oh man, Trump even said I'm the boss. The stone's on this guy. Like, damn right, he's the boss.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh yeah, a little loud, sorry.
Dear colleagues. So we have a photo.
Oh yeah. Would you like to stay for the meeting? It's okay with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm assuming that was the press. All right. Yeah, because Trump is very transparent. I think all of his cabinet meetings has had the press in full attendance. I think it's been every single cabinet meeting so far. And another one, this time from the White House, the boss. I think it's going to be the same thing, right? Maybe not. Maybe. Yeah. All right.
But I'm in my new whip. Same old attitude. But I'm on that new shit. They say they gonna rob me. See me never do.
Okay. We get the idea. And that's the White House. Another one from Rapid Response. We are not investing 10 cents. The president shuts down false narratives around the MOU with Iran. Although I would have questions about the whole $300 billion thing, though, to rebuild Iran. So I would certainly have questions about that. I'm assuming that's probably what they were asking.
President, can you press the MOU that's been reported? It includes.
Have I read it?
Well, it's been reported that it includes a $300 billion reconstruction fund funded by Gulf allies. That's false.
It's false. People, you can invest if you want. I mean, what am I going to do? Say nobody's ever allowed to invest? No, we're not investing. We're not putting up 10 cents. And people can decide to do that, but that's up to them. I mean, do you want me to say nobody's ever allowed to invest in a country? I'll say it with Egypt. Nobody's allowed to invest in Egypt. Am I supposed to say that?
I'm asking whether.
We are not investing in it, and we do not have a fund.
Are you asking Gulf countries?
No, I'm not. I'm not. If they do it, fine. But I would say they won't be doing it for a while until they find out the behavior. It's a behavior thing. But we are not investing. That's a false story that got picked up incorrectly from a statement that was pretty well made, I think. Maybe a little bit, could have been a little more accurate, frankly. But it's a story. We are not investing 10 cents. Don't forget, there's never been anybody that's been so tough on Iran. This should have been done by Clinton and Barack Hussein Obama. It should have been done by Biden. It should have been done by Bush. It could have been done by a lot of people. This has been going on for 47 years. They've ripped you off for 47 years, and I'm the only one that did anything about it. They never shot missiles at anybody. We wiped out their Navy. We wiped out their military. We wiped out their Air Force. They have no anti-aircraft. They have no radar. You know, the reason oil stayed low is because we were taking ships out every night that you didn't even know about. 2 days ago, 3 days ago, a month ago, we took out 22 ships. We averaged from 15 to 25 ships a night. Nobody knew that. Our Navy did a great job. Nobody knew what was happening. That's why oil didn't go to $300 a barrel. It went to $125, $115. Now it's at 72, 73. I heard it's lower than that now. I haven't seen it in the last couple of hours.
Oh yeah, keep tumbling.
No, we were very tough, and we took out a man named Soleimani. Remember that? You know?
Oh,
you think this would have happened if you were alive? The evil genius. He was an evil genius. People forget that. I took out Soleimani in my first term. Without that, you don't have the situation that we're in today, where we dominated. We wiped out their military, and because we did that, and then we put up the blockade, which was totally effective. Not one ship got by.
Yeah, there you go. Not one ship got by. We even disabled some of the oil tankers in the process of that, of the blockade. Okay, there we go. I got my camera back. Froze up on me again. Rolling on to the next. Wait, did we get through this one? Yeah. All right. From the White House, President Trump participates in a bilateral meeting with the president of the Arab Republic of Egypt. And I already reposted this, but here, let me undo repost and repost it again. So that way it's up at the top of the feed. So if you want to watch the whole thing, you can check it out by going straight there. Direct link below to my profile. And it's 16 minutes. It's not all that long, but I've got other more things to get to. That's why I just selected one of the highlight videos. But this will be down in the description, the link to the profile. Or you could go to @WhiteHouse, which was posted 15 hours ago, 6:41 a.m. on June 17th. And Ambassador Sergio Gore says a highly productive bilateral meeting took place today between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. The two leaders held substantive talks on trade, regional security, and deepening economic partnership on the sidelines of the G7 summit. Of course, the Prime Minister of India. And I didn't come across the full video of that meeting, and I didn't come across a highlight either, but I imagine that's out there, including right here on YouTube. From Defiant L's, Trump on Iran. I want to thank China and President Xi. He stayed totally neutral, and I want to thank Vladimir Putin. Democrats. He was very neutral. He was ultra neutral.
It's going to take, and you know the other thing, I want to thank China, President Xi. I was with him, and he stayed neutral, totally neutral, and I appreciate it. And I want to thank Vladimir Putin. He was very neutral. They could have made it much more difficult for us, and I want to say it. You know, somebody would say, "Oh, that's terrible. He's thanking President Xi of China." Well, let me tell you, I won't talk with him. You know, they have shoulder weapons to knock down airplanes. That it's not like the real deal, but they're accurate. They're fairly accurate. I said I would really appreciate you're not giving or selling any of that stuff to Iran. And you know what? For the most part, he didn't. So I just want to thank them because they made it a lot better.
Can you explain? Well, like, of course, Russia, they're tied up with the war in Ukraine, and China, I know their economy, it's always been a bit shaky. So, at least China did stay neutral. At least that, as far as we know. I wouldn't be surprised if China did secretly ship in some supplies here and there. Matter of fact, I seem to recall a couple of months ago when Operation Epic Fury was in full swing, I came across at least one or two articles or posts talking about exactly that, about how China was secretly trucking in drone parts or even full-on drones that they could put up in the sky right away, those one-way drones. But anyway, so Dan Scavino, he works in the White House. Let me get his title real quick. Assistant to the President, Deputy Chief of Staff at the White House. And this is live from Evian in France. And maybe I'll just watch a minute or so of this. I'm not exactly sure where this is specifically.
The stock market has surged to record highs, picking up thousands of points over the last short period of time. Thousands of points. And oil is dropping like it has never dropped before, at levels that went in numbers down $7, down $8. They've never seen anything like that. But if we didn't do this deal, we could have dropped more bombs for another 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 years. You would never have the Hormuz Strait open. You would never have success. Your market would have, instead of going up at levels that nobody's ever seen before, would go down at levels that nobody ever saw before, maybe except for 1929 or whatever. And you know, all the tough guys don't realize that this wasn't a 3-month deal. This was years in the making. You know why? Because I was the one that killed General Soleimani. And if I didn't kill General Soleimani, we probably wouldn't be talking right now about this deal, because he was a mad genius. They never were able to replace him. But a lot of people forget that. The tough guys, you know, the tough guys that would drive the country right down the tubes. The past 2 days have provided a chance to discuss the details of this historic agreement with many of our closest friends and allies, including the G7 nations and many presidents and prime ministers. As you saw, Prime Minister Modi was here. We had a long talk. He's a great guy. They are thrilled that we made a deal, every one of them. There's not one nation that came to us and said, please, sir, keep dropping bombs on them. Please keep dropping bombs. The stupid people say that. But I'm thrilled to report, and by the way, those last 2 days were brutal. $200 million worth of bombs. And, you know, it is expensive too, by the way, aside from everything else. And they knew I was coming for a third night. We informed them we're coming for a third night. They didn't have their Navy, it's sunk. They didn't have their Air Force, it's gone, not one plane. They didn't have anti-aircraft equipment, so we got free reign. They didn't have their leaders. But they have a new group of leaders that I think is, actually, I think they're smarter. I think they're very smart. I think they're far less radicalized, and I think they're. I think they're
we'll just have
really
to see.
Good. They love their country. You know, you talk about regime change. Nobody will say that, but I guess that's look. Their one set of leaders is all gone. Their second set of leaders is all gone. Their third set of leaders a little bit gone, but for the most part, and frankly, I think that's regime change. I think they're going to behave much differently. I think they see a different way of life that they were never exposed to. So the one thing I didn't want to see is I didn't want to see economic catastrophe. If you kept this going, that could have happened. But all I know is every time we talked about the possibility of peace, the stock market shot up like a rocket ship. It never went down. They didn't like it. The people, you know, the stock market is more brilliant than anybody there is, including the people on the stage, other than me, of course.
Of course.
Let's see. I don't know. What do you think, Scott? Is the stock market more brilliant than you?
No, sir.
Oh, that's a
no, sir.
terrible statement.
The ego on
the
him.
stock market is quite brilliant, and every time we
Howard
said
Lightning
something
would say the same thing.
amazing,
No, I'm the best in the world.
like we're going to settle, it would go up. And every time we said something negative, like, guess what, we're not going to be able to settle, it would go down very big, Peter, very, very big.
Okay, well, as much as I would like to continue this, I'll repost this as well as everything else that I've reposted, and you know where to find it. And just rock on to the next from Eric Daugherty. Justin, President Trump says he'll maintain a U.S. military presence around the Strait of Hormuz to ensure Iran complies. Good, no games. And that actually reminds me when he mentioned that if we kept dropping bombs on Iran and if it dragged on for, let's say, 2 years, then the Strait of Hormuz would have never been reopened. I get kind of confused when he says that because on one hand, we've decimated their military, their air power, their power at sea, their anti-aircraft missiles, surface-to-air missiles. Like it's all been decimated, it's all gone, but somehow we would have a really shaky, at best, Strait of Hormuz if the fighting continued. So I don't know. I get mixed signals whenever that gets thrown around. But let's hear what he says here. It's quick. And very quiet.
It's a good question. We haven't thought of it. We really, probably a while. It's a good place to stay. The question was, how long will you leave the military in the Gulf? I would say a little while. See how it all goes. I think it's going to go well, but we'll see. So I will see you guys at Versailles.
Well, I imagine that the military's never too far away in case things get crazy. So I'm not sure how long that they will be there. I mean, I don't know. They could be there for months, maybe a year. I don't know. From Vice President J.D. Vance, he delivers remarks in Nassau County, New York. And just like the others, I'm going to repost this as well. And it looks like it's an hour and 18 minutes in total. So also know where to find that too. But I do have one highlight from that from J.D. Vance saying that Democrats have become anti-Semitic, anti-Christian, and anti-white. But the thing about the Republican Party is that if you work hard, you play by the rules, and you love this country, you're welcome on our team.
They're anti-women playing in women's sports. They want men to play in women's sports, the craziest thing.
Uh-oh.
They become anti-Semitic in the Democratic Party. They become anti-Christian in the Democratic Party. They become anti-white in the Democratic Party. And what I love about the Republican Party is whether you're black or white, whether you're a Jew, a Christian, or a person of no faith, the thing about the Republican Party is that if you work hard, you play by the rules, and you love this country, you are welcome on our team. They're anti...
Well, there you go. Pretty simply put. The grass is always greener on the conservative side. And from J.D. Vance, he was on Greg Gutfeld last night, and just like the last one, I've got the full interview here, another repost for you. It's about 6.5 minutes, so it's a bit too long for me to play the whole thing, so I grabbed almost 2 minutes worth.
Trump talks about his brother who was an alcoholic and died an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Your mother entered recovery. She's doing great, and I do believe that the underpinning in that is a meaning question.
Yes.
That, like, when you look at the 12-step programs, they try to address the underlying causes of drinking, which a lot of it has to do with meaning.
Absolutely.
And I mean, how valuable was that to see your mother? Because, like, when someone gets into a 12-step program, it affects your life too.
Absolutely. In fact, I've gone to a number of NA or AA meetings with my mom, and they're amazing, but they're also spiritual. There's a lot of talk about God. There's a lot of talk about Jesus at these meetings. Even though they welcome everybody, there is this spiritual underpinning that I think makes it work. But, you know, it's an amazing thing just about the redemptive story that God sometimes puts us on, because I'm sitting here right now. I'm the Vice President of the United States, which sounds crazy even when I say it. And I have a 9-year-old son, and I remember when Usha was pregnant with that baby boy, I thought to myself, my mom is never going to meet this child, because the addiction was, you know, she had been clean and sober for about a year, but I had seen her fall off the wagon before, and I thought to myself, she'll probably never meet this baby. And yet, she is now 11 years clean and sober. She took that 1 year sobriety and turned it into something more. And I think that God speaks to us, all of us, in our own ways. And one of the ways that I learned that he has a plan for everybody is seeing my mom transform her life and transform herself. And now it's crazy. My mom goes around and talks to addict groups. And she talks about how to get back on the horse. You know, you fall off the horse, you got to keep getting back on. That redemption is a big part of what makes Christianity so special.
Yeah, it's always ugly, but it's good when people get help, especially when they get their coins and the years roll on, because they're never truly fully recovered. They're always in that mindset of recovery. But there you go. More of the human side of J.D. Vance on Gutfeld last night. Vice President J.D. Vance got another one. Vice President Vance on the president's peace deal. And he was on CBS Mornings. I'm assuming it was this morning because this was posted, let's see, at 9 o'clock in the morning. So, yes, it was definitely earlier today. VP Vance on the president's peace deal. And it's a quote, so let's just get straight to it.
What does this deal fundamentally do? It ensures that Iran won't get a nuclear weapon, and it ensures the Straits of Hormuz are open. That's what the president wanted to accomplish. He wanted to ensure that Iran would not have a nuclear weapon, and this deal will accomplish precisely that. I do think there are people, Nora, who sometimes confuse the ends with the means. The president of the United States used diplomacy, he used economic leverage, he also used military leverage in order to ensure that Iran would have a nuclear weapon. That was the goal. I think there are some people who just want the bombing to continue regardless of whether it accomplishes anything for Americans. That's not what the president is trying to do. He's not trying to cause misery for the people of Iran. He's trying to ensure that they don't have a nuclear weapon, and that's what we've done. Is this deal fun?
Yeah, because then it would make it a lot harder to defeat that government down the road if they had access to nuclear weapons. From Breaking 911, the Federal Reserve Chair, Kevin Warsh, because we have a new chairman of the Federal Reserve now. The committee decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 3.5 to 3.75% in support of the Fed's dual mandate. And we'll get a look at this, and I've got a follow-up to this also.
As you saw a few moments ago, the committee decided to maintain the target range for the Fed funds rate at 3.5 to 3.75%. in support of the Fed's dual mandate. The committee also reaffirmed its policy of maintaining ample reserves in the banking system. Economic activity is expanding at a solid pace, despite elevated uncertainty that owes in part to the conflict in the Middle East. Productivity growth and capital investment both strong. Job gains have kept pace with the workforce, and the unemployment rate has changed little. We recognize that inflation has been running well ahead of the Fed's long-stated inflation goal of 2%.
Yeah, it's over 4%
That's been going on
right
for
now.
more than 5 years. Persistently high prices are a burden for the American people.
So what, we're just going to have to get used to it now? 4%?
But the recent past need not be
There's no way.
I am pleased to report that members of the FOMC are unambiguous and unanimous. This committee will deliver price stability.
Well, let's hope so.
At any institution, a change in leadership is a natural and timely opportunity to reaffirm its mission, to review current practices, and to consider whether those practices best meet our objectives. My Fed colleagues and I will be working in close collaboration to ask what changes might improve the conduct of monetary policy. On that score, you might have already noticed something, a difference in today's policy statement. It's a bit shorter, a bit simpler, and it dispenses with some older language. That statement just gives you the facts as best we can judge it. Absent also is so-called forward guidance, which we agreed was not well suited to the current policy conjuncture. This afternoon, you also received the usual summary of economic projections. It's been the practice of this committee for participants to submit these projections, and I have encouraged my colleagues to continue to do so. I, however, have refrained from offering any projections of my own, consistent with my long-held views on the SEP, at least as currently structured. In the median projections, real GDP rises at 2.2% this year, 2.3% next year, and total PC inflation runs at 3.6% this year, 2.3% next year.
I keep hearing 4%.
The unemployment rate stands at about 4.3%.
I mean, yeah,
the median
also 4.3 for
participant
unemployment.
judges that the appropriate federal funds rate to be at 3.8% at the end of this year and 3.6% at the end of next.
Look, maybe I have them backwards. Maybe it is inflation's at around the 3% range. But I'm pretty sure that I did read, even as recent as this week, that the inflation rate is over 3. It's over 4. It's like 4.2 or something like that. So that's one thing that they really got to get under control, because like you said, it's been something like 5 years that we've had elevated inflation, at times way above the 2% target. And from U.S. Southern Command, on June 16th, at the direction of Southcom Commander General Francis L. Donovan, Joint Task Force Southern Spear conducted a lethal kinetic strike on a vessel operated by designated terrorist organizations. Intelligence confirmed the vessel was transiting along known narco-trafficking routes in the Eastern Pacific and was engaged in narco-trafficking operations. One male narco-terrorist was killed during this action, and there were 2 male survivors. Following the engagement, U.S. Southcom immediately notified the U.S. Coast Guard to activate the search and rescue system for the survivors. No U.S. military forces were harmed, and they've got Department of War and hashtag Operation Southern Spear. So, oh man, instant obliteration. This is a short clip. I'll play it again. Man, you didn't even see it coming. It just annihilated it. Somehow 2 people survived. I don't know, maybe they jumped off like at the very last minute, maybe. So, yep, there you go. Another one taken out. I wonder if they've hit 200 yet. Last I checked, it was around 140, 150 vessels that they've wiped out going back to September of last year. And Homeland Security, by land or sea, our borders are closed. Last week, U.S. Coast Guard crew out of Station Miami Beach encountered and disabled a vessel carrying 25 Chinese nationals attempting to enter our nation illegally. CBP and CBP-AMO assisted following the interdiction, and HSIHQ initiated a criminal investigation. This sends a clear message to any illegal alien attempting to enter the United States. Don't even think about it. So no video, just the image that they shared. So we still have Chinese nationals trying to sneak inside the country. And I'm sure they were a lot more successful under Biden, but not under the Trump administration. They will get found, and they won't be allowed to enter. But Florida does have the wet foot, dry foot policy, but I believe that only applies to Cuban nationals. I think that's only Cuba as that pertains to, meaning that if they're still out at sea, even if they're just mere feet from stepping up on the beach, if they get caught by the Coast Guard, they're being sent right back. But if they actually set foot on the sand or on dry land on the state of Florida, then they are permitted to stay or seek asylum or whatever it is, whatever the process is. But yeah, that it remains in effect. The Coast Guard opens fire on a boat smuggling 25 Chinese nationals near Florida after it refused to stop. Man, they even opened fire on them. Holy shit. Let's see, in a stark warning that U.S. borders are closed by land or sea, the U.S. Coast Guard opened fire to disable a non-compliant vessel attempting to smuggle 25 Chinese nationals into the country off the coast of Florida. Okay, all right, so they weren't firing it like them. They were just probably trying to fire at their motors. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security told Fox that on June 10th, a boat carrying 25 illegal immigrants from China refused to comply with Coast Guard orders to stop 1 mile south of Key Biscayne. Crews from Coast Guard Station Miami Beach initially deployed warning shots, but when those proved ineffective, they used disabling fire to successfully halt the vessel, according to DHS. There were no injuries reported. And following the interdiction, the Chinese nationals were transferred to the Coast Guard cutter Margaret Norvell for processing, and their boat was seized and towed to Station Miami Beach. Special agents from Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Homeland Security Investigations launched a criminal investigation into the attempted entry with assistance from Customs and Border Patrol or Border Protection, Air and Marine Operations. DHS Acting Assistant Secretary Lauren Biz delivered a stern warning following the bust. Quote, "This sends a clear message to illegal aliens attempting to enter the United States. Don't even think about it," Buzz told Fox. "By land or sea, our borders are closed." Lieutenant Matthew Ross, commanding officer of the Coast Guard Station Miami Beach, emphasized local, state, and federal maritime law enforcement partners remain vigilant against unlawful migration ventures. And so to finish this up, quote, "Anyone considering one of these dangerous voyages should understand that they are risking their lives at sea and can expect to be interdicted and repatriated," Ross said. The enforcement action falls under Operation Vigilant Sentry, a layered approach by the Coast Guard and its partners to maintain a continuous presence across the Florida Straits, Caribbean Sea, and surrounding waters to deter and prevent illegal maritime migration. Well done, Coast Guard. The border is closed. And from CBP, nothing too deep for Border Patrol to handle. BoreStar, the U.S. Border Patrol SOG search, and the official account of the U.S. Border Patrol Special Operations Group. Search, Trauma, and Rescue Dive Team conducts specialized operations at our cargo facilities. Divers search underneath incoming international vessels for potential parasite loads attached to the hull. What can't we do? So, yeah, man, looking for parasites, not just contraband. Actually looking for hitchhikers on the hull, so that way we don't get any kind of invasive species in our waters. At least I'm assuming that's what they're talking about. I mean, at least that's how I read it. And from Sean Parnell, "No force on earth can match the unbreakable spirit of the American warfighter." Let's have a look.
America's military is unmatched. Projecting power, denying passage to adversaries, and protecting our interest at the time and place of our choosing. The most powerful, the most lethal the world has ever seen.
Damn straight. Unstoppable force. That's for sure. VA Secretary Doug Collins. I haven't done anything, or haven't come across anything from Doug Collins, probably at least a couple of weeks, maybe. "Every athlete at the Warrior Games has a story of resilience and determination. These games celebrate their strength, perseverance, and competitive spirit." And by the way, Doug Collins, he's the Secretary of the Veterans Administration, as it will, Veterans Affairs. Anyway, so let's have a look at this. The Warrior Games 2026.
Hey everybody, it's Doug. We're out here in San Antonio, Warrior Games. What a great place to be. This is a place in which our Warriors can continue to compete, use the abilities and skills that they have, and overcome any obstacles or difficulties that they may have. Competing in normal games, from wheelchair events to standing events, it's all about being a part of being that competitive spirit that put our Warriors out there to start with. Warrior Games is a great place. I'm so happy to be here again this year. Saw them last year in Colorado. It's great to be with them in San Antonio. This is something that we continue always. Our veterans continue in life serving at the highest level and also being able to compete. Just because they may have difficulties doesn't mean they're not warriors. This is what the Warrior Games are about.
Oh, cool, man. That's awesome. That's what the Warrior Games are all about. I noticed 80 years of healthcare for veterans. So the VA, they're celebrating their 80th anniversary this year. I didn't know that. Well, there you go. Guess you learn something new every day. And from ALX, Alex, they're chanting, send them back in EU Parliament now. This is the sentiment in Europe and in America. Mass immigration was a failed experiment, and those who are still pushing it want to destroy Western civilization.
Concessions on tariff rate quotes. Vote on consent by roll call vote. The vote is open.
They're all yelling, send them back. Maybe not every single one of them, but there's a loud group who are, at least. And this went viral today. What was the last check here? No, I don't want to refresh it necessarily, but it's got 35 million views so far. And this was posted yesterday at 9:00 a.m. from Rupert Lowe MP. The Forceful Penetration Gang Inquiry Report out of Great Britain. And the inquiry report, it is 219 pages in total, and there is a page that I will check out here. Okay, so the Our Gang Inquiry examined the systematic targeting of vulnerable girls, overwhelmingly white, British, by predominantly Muslim Pakistani gangs across towns and cities throughout the United Kingdom. The evidence put to the inquiry confirms that this scandal constitutes one of the most horrendous failures in the history of our country. Organized networks of perpetrators built coordinated operations that transported victims between locations, supplied them with drugs and alcohol, recorded abuse for distribution and blackmail, and passed girls between multiple adult men. These crimes have been committed for decades, since the 1950s, by Pakistanis in particular, and have affected nearly every region of our nation. The scale of the crimes committed is staggering. It has been previously established that at the very least, 250,000 young white girls have been subjected to repeated R and gang R and trafficking, torture, pregnancy, forced Islamic conversion, and lifelong trauma. This is inside the UK, 250,000. The true number is probably higher. The perpetrators bear primary responsibility, yet the institutional failures that enabled them for decades must also be confronted. In court records and official inquiries, around 87% of those convicted in these group-based child sexual exploitation cases bore distinctively Muslim names. The vast majority of men involved in these gangs were not convicted. The vast majority, not even convicted. And Dr. Taj Harji, an imam with the Oxford Islamic Congregation, believes the true proportion of gang members who are Muslim to be around 95%. This figure far exceeds the Muslim share of the overall United Kingdom population. The overwhelming majority of the R gang networks consisted entirely of men from Muslim backgrounds, predominantly of Pakistani heritage, although smaller groups from Somali, Iranian, Syrian, Turkish, and other Muslim origins were also involved. So that was the passage that I was interested in reading. Again, this goes on for over 200 pages, this entire report. Just absolutely staggering. And again, tens of millions of views just over the last, 30 some odd hours, 153,000 likes. So it's circulating all over the place. And of course, I'm definitely going to have that linked if you want to have a look at that yourself. But that just absolutely blew me away that the number is over 250,000 girls that were subjected to that in the UK. Just appalling. All right, so breaking number one. This happened today. This was actually posted 3 hours ago, so I believe this happened just this afternoon. Breaking: massive warehouse fire erupts in Boyle Heights, California, involving solar panels and sending thick black smoke billowing across the sky. I have a couple of clips of this, and it looks like there's no sound. So this is zoomed in. I think the next clip it's more of a zoomed out view. I mean, massive plumes of smoke towering up over the city. Absolutely crazy. Let's pause that. Matthew C. Dorff, Breaking massive fire at a commercial building in Boyle Heights. LAFD firefighters have transitioned to defensive operations. All crews have been ordered off the roof and out of the building's interior. So what, are they basically abandoning the building at this point? Maybe at the time that he posted that. Enormous fire, man. Look at that. It's like Lineage. Not familiar with Lineage. But that does not look like a small building at all. It's probably going to be measured in the billions of dollars, I would assume. And this isn't long after that other massive fire that what's-his-name started, the tissue paper factory. The building was about this size, and it burned down completely. So that happened today in California. Hopefully they're going to get that put out if they haven't already. And from breaking number one, drivers in Alabama watched as a massive wall of rain rapidly swept toward them while they sat at a red light, turning clear skies into a near whiteout within seconds. I think this is the last thing that I got.
This is what it looks like when the rain is coming towards you. It is pouring rain about 500 feet in front of me. Keep watching. Keep watching. This happens all the time here.
Yep, here too.
And you'll see it hit us here right now.
Yep, just like a waterfall. And I live in the Tampa Bay area, and this happens all the time. I mean, we're the lightning capital of the country. In our rainy season, it runs from June 1st until the end of September. And I mean, we'll have weeks where we get daily heavy rain, just like this, surrounded by blue skies, and just this big towering cumulonimbus cloud would just blow up out of nowhere, just right on top of you, and just start dumping just waterfalls of rain. Across the street will stay bone dry in some cases. And I mean, I've seen like every variety of this type of weather, and it's definitely amazing. It's pretty cool to experience for sure. So anyway, that is going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed the video, please give a quick like and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow night as we explore the swamp Monday through Friday. I also post daily on X, which is where you can peek at some of tomorrow's content. And don't forget, video clips from tonight will begin dropping on the channel tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern. Thank you very much for watching. God bless the troops, and God bless America.